There have been two extraordinary events in my life. The first one being my accident and my subsequent NDE and afterlife experience. And the second one, my spiritual awakening, that have both shaped my life in every aspect imaginable. They have touched upon every aspect of my life, every level of my existence, from the work that I do, from the food that I eat. The fact that I sit here now and make these videos and talk to you in this way is completely and directly tied in with these two experiences, and especially the spiritual awakening. So for many people, and for many people in the spiritual community, the year 2012 was very significant because there was talk of the end of the Mayan calendar, the fact that Earth ended one cycle and started a new one, and this new cycle is an improvement, is a higher vibrational cycle than the previous one. And apparently this has to do with the fact that ever since the year 2012, our planet and our solar system is going through a new part of space, a part that we have never been before, where we are in contact and where we are being bombarded by much higher vibrational energies. And these energies have a direct effect on humans, on everything on Earth, and on Earth as a planet itself. So I want to share my personal experience because it ties in with a much wider experience, which I will talk about a little bit later in this video. So one night at the end of October 2011, in fact it was the night before Halloween, which I think is very telling, because as popular belief will have it, the veil between the dimensions becomes very thin during Halloween, and usually there is a walkout of 2 or 3 days before the event and 2 or 3 days after the Halloween event. So I am quite sure it had a lot to do with it. So on the night before Halloween in 2011, I was laying in bed, and it was about 1 o'clock at night, so 1 a.m. And I was still awake. I had only just gone to bed. And all of a sudden, a white, luminous sphere appeared on the right side of my bed. It was in a corner, in the right corner of my bedroom. And it was elliptic in shape. It was about this size, though it would alternate in size a little bit. It would expand sometimes and smaller, but it was on average about this big in this shape. This light, this luminous sphere, emanated an unbelievably strong white silvery light. So it made my eyes tear most of the time, and at certain moments I was just crying because of the intensity. So at some moments there would be sort of bubbles, sort of rings coming from the main light, sort of like these bubbles that dolphins blow underwater. They're also sort of silvery, and they would float through the air towards me as to draw me in even stronger, even closer. It was magnetic, simply magnetic. And as I relaxed into it, I just completely trusted that this was right. So there was no fear. I was not scared. It was a most extraordinary beginning. I had been put in a position by what felt like 100 invisible hands that had softly but determinedly shifted my body in a very relaxed position, with my legs slightly apart, the feet up, and my arms also slightly away from the body, and with my palms facing upwards. It felt like I was hooked up to a high voltage energy circuit, and all the while my body receiving, being, these 1,000 volt streams, currents going through my entire body. And at times it made my muscles, especially in my legs and in my arms, jerk quite violently. It was quite painful at times. Physically, it was not exactly an overall very pleasant experience. It was intense in every word. While the electrical currents, while all the while the energies were streaming at very high voltage through my system, through my nervous system, my nadis, my energetic meridians, I started to receive downloads of information, packages of information, as a sort of telepathic download into my mind about my cosmic heritage, where my soul came from, that I am a starseed. I was informed about my life's purpose for this life, about my soul contract, why I choose these parents and why I choose to be born in the country I was born in. I learned many things about myself that are very relevant and important to this particular lifetime. I also learned that I signed up to be awakened, that I signed up to learn of all of these concepts, and that I was going to play a role in the global awakening, in the Earth Ascension. So at some moment, the main sphere, the main light, dissolved. This was after many hours. It lasted well into the early hours of the morning. I would say till about 4 or 5 o'clock. So it was very long. And then the next moment I realized that there were hundreds of smaller lights appearing on my ceiling. They would form larger clusters of light. They were amorphous in shape. And they would swirl around my room and above me, over my body. It really looked like an aurora borealis that was putting on a private display, just for my eyes only, in my bedroom. And this would repeat itself many times, as the light, the main sphere, and the aurora borealis would reappear many times, over and over. I also know that I am by far the only one. There are many people like me, and eventually this would lead me through many other synchronicities that came from the nightly energetic downloads, to my teacher, Dolores Cannon, who wrote a book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers, in which she explains the concept of starseed and all of the thousands of souls that reincarnated, especially in these times, to assist Earth in this transition. And I am one of them. I am a volunteer, and it is my mission to share this information and to share my personal experiences, to also help and to assist all the others that are going through a very similar experience. During all these high vibrational energy downloads that I received over all these months, I was introduced to many new metaphysical concepts, to the law of one, to the law of our universe, that every soul exists on multiple timelines. I was also told that I was a walk-in, and the concept of walk-in means that prior to your existence in this life, So as part of your soul contract, you agree that at some point in your life, you relinquish the old soul, the old self, and allow a new part to come in. In my case, this happened during my accident in which I died. So during the time that I was in the afterlife, they switched the soul parts. So all of the old me has been taken out for all of the new me to come in. And this was, it was a total switch, a complete new soul aspect, a higher soul aspect that was brought in because they basically were afraid that I was not going to fulfill my purpose, and to make sure that I was going to live my mission, they had decided that that moment was going to be created, and all of the old me was taken out, and the entire new me was going to be brought into the body. This soul was a complete soul, a higher vibrational, higher frequency soul. It was already waiting in the wings to incarnate in a baby. But because of the urgency of the situation, it was brought into this body. During that first year, sparked by the whole spiritual awakening, with all these downloads, there was so much happening to me, and I was receiving so much new information that I had started to keep a diary. I called it my angel diaries. And I have many diaries full of the information from the downloads that I received about my spirit guides, from the angelic realms, my higher self. I chronicled how I learned how to channel higher parts of myself, or entities that we would call archangels. I was particularly connected to Metatron. I received a lot of messages from the higher evolved entity that is called Metatron, etc., etc. As a direct result of this, of all of these downloads that were still going on, all of my psychic abilities basically exploded. So I was receiving messages for people. I could see auras. I was clairaudient, clairvoyant. So my psychic abilities were very strong. I also, in retrospect, I think that whole thing with the light, the whole spiritual awakening, had definitely something to do with me taking up Reiki. I had started Reiki in September 2011, about 2 months before the light actually appeared. And I'm quite convinced that those two things are interlinked, because Reiki is working with Reiki energy, which is a cosmic healing energy. And I think that somehow opened a door. It somehow opened something in my energy field. It facilitated all that came after it. One of the things that also started happening almost on a daily basis, which I have chronicled in my diaries about, is what I call the glitches in the matrix. I started seeing not only multidimensional timelines at the same time, but I started seeing the sort of unraveling, the tearing of the fabric that forms our perceived reality, quite literally, and seeing through that. So that sort of then enabled the multidimensionality. And this all happens while being conscious. It did not happen in my dreams or during the night. This happens during my waking conscious states. So there was a lot to take in. So during this whole year of intense energetic downloads, while I would spend basically night after night hours being in these altered states of consciousness, being in total ecstasy, you know, your life starts to unravel. You know, I'm sure many of you can understand that. Like, nothing is the same. You cannot have such an expansive, profound experience and not, that doesn't touch, you know, on the daily fabric of your life. It was like I had entered into this maelstrom, like a transitional maelstrom of my life. So that first year was profound and very solitary. I almost confided in no one. I retreated to myself, doing yoga, meditation, integrating the whole process. And then by the end of that year, I had reached a point where I felt that I had gained some kind of perspective on it, that I had integrated a lot of it. I felt in a better place. It wasn't so overwhelming anymore. And I felt that I had to share some of this with my direct environment, with my closest friends, because I had felt that I was becoming a little bit like a fraud, because I had changed so much on such a profound level. I wasn't the old me anymore. So I felt a responsibility. I felt a very strong urge to open up to my closest friends. It was, in a way, a spiritual coming out, as you will. So I remember very well that just before Christmas 2012, I composed a very long letter, a long email, in which I illustrate what had happened to me over the course of that year. And that I understood that for many of my friends, this was probably not making much sense, that this would probably be very strange for them, but I asked them to bear with me. I also asked them to believe me. I convinced them that I had not lost all my marbles, that I was still very sane, and in fact I felt stronger, I felt smarter, I felt wiser than I had ever been before, because I basically felt there was more truth, more integrity, and there was just more good of me because of all of the because of the entire experience that I was in. This email was met with very different results. Some people resonated with it. They connected with me in a very beautiful way, but some friends really did not understand it. I understood that for many people this is quite frightening, and so that was another big shift in my life. And I am sharing these intimate details because I am so acutely aware that there are many people like me. There are thousands out there that are going through a very similar experience. And I had to go through that first year, or even a bit more maybe, mostly alone. And I want to reach out to all these people that have a similar experience, and that you are not alone, that you are not going crazy, but that this is very profound, that this is a life-changing experience from which there is no going back. Once that box is open, once those doors of expansion have opened, you know, there is never going back to the small limited perspective that you had before. While you're in the throes of the spiritual awakening, You're going through a very challenging process. Obviously, not every spiritual awakening happens like mine. There are many ways in which this can happen or be kickstarted. Um, but any spiritual awakening is an acute and a real opportunity for expansion. It is jolting us onto a higher level on the evolutional ladder of human consciousness. It's about doing shadow work. It's about letting go. It's a big letting go of everything you thought was you and everything you thought you believed in. It's a big purge. It's very painful. I recently came along this little poem or this quote that someone wrote about the spiritual transformation. And I thought that summed it up very nicely. And it said, transformation isn't sweet and bright. It's dark and murky. An unraveling of the untruths you've carried in your body, a practice in facing your created demons, a complete uprooting before becoming. In my personal opinion, I also don't think that a spiritual awakening and being on a spiritual path is necessarily always just about you per se. It begins with you, but it is very much, it is also an awakening to realize that you are part of a bigger whole, and it's moving away from the surface to self to the surface to others. Just having all your psychic abilities, for instance, being heightened and knowing a few tricks really is just a novelty in and of itself. You know, by the way, anyone can channel because everyone can learn how to meditate and open themselves up to this higher perspective. You have to commit yourself to a spiritual practice, whatever that means for you. It is nurturing a process in which you keep asking yourself, how can I and my new abilities serve the collective? Because all of these things are about intention and practice. You know, all of this is not just for the special few, but it's for everyone. It's anyone that wants to grow and has a commitment, you know, to a certain path, can learn all these things. And this is where it ties in to the so-called ascension process, because ascension process is about the collective growth, awakening, and an expansion. Because within this global awakening, within the global ascension, we are moving away from the ego-driven singular perspective to a much more expanded collective paradigm. We are ascending to newer energies, to higher energies. And in able to do that, we obviously need to transcend a lot of the old energies that keep us locked within the old paradigm. So a spiritual awakening entails asking yourself constantly, how can I serve the collective to the best of my abilities? The driving force behind ascension is raising human consciousness. While my own recalibration process is still going on until this day, it obviously has changed over time. It has mellowed in many ways, but it's still ongoing. And this process also comes with certain physical symptoms, which we call ascension symptoms. Flu-like symptoms, while we're not really having a flu, heart palpitations, very unpleasant hot flashes, strange itching of the skin, just to name a few. There is a whole list of ascension so-called Ascension symptoms. There is much information to be found on this online on the various forums. I've had my fair share of those. So again, there are some very unpleasant side effects to this process, but let's say it's all for the good cause. Of course, there is an upside to all of this. There are many positive things that come with it as a result of your expansion. To me personally, the upside is that some of my new expanded psychic abilities are helping me in my work as a past life regressionist. I can see auras of people. I receive special messages because I'm clairaudient. I can see different energies from different dimensions, etc. All of this sort of flows into my practice as a QHHT practitioner, therefore enabling me to do better sessions and to be of more service, so that I am really enjoying. Now, there is another aspect to this whole global ascension, and that is the new children being born. Already since the late 1990s of the last century and overflowing into the new century, obviously, the noughties, there were children being born, large numbers, that were called indigo children, crystal children, rainbow children. They were given various terms. Because people already started noticing that these children were so different from us, from their parents, and from other children. These are the new children. These children are higher evolved souls. They also come with different DNA. They have more DNA activated. These children are often very sensitive. Most of them come in with all this, what we call psychic abilities already in place. A lot of these children come in with full memory, as we say. That means that they are able to recall their past lives. They also are fully aware of where their soul came from. So they are completely tuned in. Again, this is a subject that my teacher Dolores wrote a book about. The 3 Waves of Volunteers talks also about this aspect about these new children, because they are the new human. They are the new humans that come in with a different blueprint, not only on a physical level, but also on a spiritual, on a quantum level, is actually what I want to say. So if you think that you're one of those new children, or if you're watching this video and you're going through a similar journey, I am here to tell you that you're not crazy, that everything is going to be fine, that there is a lot of help out here, there is a lot of guidance and a lot of information, which is very unlike my own experience, where I had to do a lot of it on my own, and it was very challenging. So things have definitely improved enormously. It could also help to maybe do some sort of a reading, go to a medium or to a shaman, or perhaps do a regression, because these things can help you enormously to get a better perspective on what it is you're going through and who you really are, and put your life's purpose in this particular time in a better context. None of this is existing within a void or in a vacuum. First of all, everything is interconnected. All of this is happening over many levels. And even within the scientific and the academic world, they are wakening up to these concepts, to this ascension process. There's people like Graham Hancock, Bruce Lipton, just to name a few, that have full-heartedly embraced these new concepts, and by virtue of their work and their lectures and all their output are very actively contributing to this conversation and also adding very positively to the overall ascension process. And so my personal aim in all of this is to help build bridges from the old 3D energies towards the fourth and the fifth dimensional energies, which is what we need to do in able to get to New Earth, because the New Earth reality, the New Earth energies exist within the higher energies. So the heart of the ascension process is transcending all the lower energies of 3D in order to make the transition smoothly to 4 and 5D. And that is what I am committed to. We are truly living in exciting times. In the words of my teacher, we are living in the most exciting times of our universe as we are moving towards the New Earth. So it's incredibly exciting to be working together on getting all this information out there, to be together in the ascension process. As we are all working towards a disclosure that will expose all the falsehoods. So all of us, everyone on this planet, will have access to the wider truth. That alone will provide the way out of the matrix. I think that step by step we are filling in the contours of a whole new reality map, and it's time. I have always said that my life is full of miracles, and this is definitely one of them.